Hi, I just wanted to put this together to help other people who maybe are just starting with drones, or maybe you're midway through, or maybe you're an advanced expert, and I'm gonna say a whole bunch of stuff that you already know. So I put together this YouTube channel, Shiver Technologies, just to categorize and gather all the information that I have dealing with homes and with drones. So these are my lessons learned for the small unmanned aircraft systems, which if you haven't seen that before, that's what the FAA likes to categorize drones. So the way that I began is I started off with something small. DJI is a company that makes most of the consumer grade drones that you see out there. I did at first look at building my own. Watched a bunch of YouTube channels. Started looking at controllers, looking at motors, looking at all airframes, all sorts of stuff, and it just seemed to be too complicated. So I said, well, let's see what's out there that's not that expensive. So I stumbled upon the Tello, mostly because I found somebody who had a YouTube channel on how to program it to follow something, to follow an object. And I thought it would be kind of cool as maybe a project with my son-in-law. He was 12 at the time, trying to get him interested in programming drones, things positive. That didn't quite work out so well, but the Tello did work. It was kind of grainy. And so that was kind of to test the waters to make sure it was something I was really going to stick with before I spent some money on it. So then from there, I went to the Mini 2. So the Mini 2 is at 249 grams, and that'll become more relevant here in a minute when we start talking about Part 107 and registering your drone. So the Mini 2, you can fly recreational and do whatever you'd like with it. Well, within the rules, of course. But it has to be for personal use if you're going to do it for non-Part 107 flying, for recreational use, that is. And so sticking to the topic on this slide, my next drone, then the Air 2, went on sale. I believe that they threw it on sale because they were trying to clear out inventory. The new Air 2S just came out. The Mini 3 just dropped a few days ago. So I have a feeling they were just trying to clear things out and get people interested in the product groups again. And I would say now, the Air 2 is primarily all that I fly. I got the flyaway kit, which comes with 3 batteries. With my Mini 2, I had a battery, I bought a second battery. But the Air 2 just became my go-to for flying all the time. It's got multiple batteries. It has a little button that you can push on it to see the current status. So it's just easier to do than the Mini 2 is. So in the beginning, I stuck with just recreational flying. So, and if you're not initiated to this topic, the FAA does allow recreational exemption from the Part 107. So if you're just going to fly for personal use, then you can fly recreationally. And there's still some rules that you're supposed to follow. And what I did, in a couple slides, I'm gonna talk about a logbook, but what I did was I wrote them on the inside of my logbook so that if anybody ever walked up to me and started asking me questions, I had them. So the rules are, you can register your drones. They have to be less than 250 grams, as mentioned. You need to join a CBO, that's a community-based organization, and it's just basically coming up with common rules for flying, such as don't fly over people who aren't part of your flight operation. You have to keep your drone within visual line of sight. You have to give way to manned aircraft. It's not in there, but a little trivia there. You also have to give way to hot air balloons. Hot air balloons actually are given right of way by a manned aircraft. So if a Cessna sees a balloon, they have to go around it. If you see a balloon or a Cessna, you have to go around them. You have to get Lance authorization if you're going to go into certain controlled airspace. I'm not going to really go into that. And you have to keep your altitude below 400 feet at all times, unless the object that you're flying, for example, a 100-foot tall building, you can go within a certain radius of that building 400 feet above the height of that building. So if it's 100 foot, then you can go up to 500 feet above ground level relative to your starting point. But once you get past it, outside of that radius, you have to come back down. Also keep in mind that as altitudes change, if you're flying a DJI, the drone controller will be showing you relative to your position. So that can come into play with what's your actual adjusted level above above ground level AGL. So studying for the Part 107, I later on decided to take the 107 so I could fly anywhere, anytime, with authorizations, following the rules, and I didn't have to worry about law enforcement or the FAA or anybody giving me an issue. There are several apps that are out there that can help you get your LANC approval for getting airspace approval. Those come and go, so just kind of Google and see whatever's recent and most relevant. So once you finish your Part 107, about a month later, you'll get that card you see in the lower right corner there in the mail with your name. In the interim, you get something that you can print out, and I printed it out and put it on the inside of my logbook. So again, if anybody approaches me, that's a quick reference to keep everything in a positive light, hopefully. How did I study for the Part 107? I started looking at courses. Courses seem to be great. If you don't really know what to study, maybe you've got an employer who's paying for it for you. There's a number of groups out there. Pilot Institute is one. They have really good classes. There's a few others. So just go on Reddit or Google Part 107 courses, and from that point forward till eternity, you'll start getting Part 107 commercials for programs. So if you don't want to pay, there's plenty of resources online. You could poke around the FAA website. What I ended up doing was buying stuff. So for example, let's see if I can get it to come back here. A lot of the publications the FAA puts out, you can get on Amazon. And so I did that, but then come to find out everything that is available online for free. I still like to have something that I can write in and highlight and stuff. So I bought that, and then I also bought, whenever you take the test, they're going to hand you this. So this is going to have all kinds of sectional charts and different things that you're going to need while flying. So I wanted to have it to study before I walk into the test. So I'm not spending, 5 or 10 minutes just orienting myself to that. Well, to me, that's pivotal. I mean, if you want to do well, you buy that book. If you don't really care, or if you don't want to have something laying around after you're done, then don't buy it. You can pass it without it. That makes it a whole lot easier. No matter what you study, there are going to be gotcha tests questions, so don't let those throw you. For me, they were asking questions about high intensity lights, and those high intensity lights at high altitudes or on very tall towers, things about dimming the lights and requests to dim and things like that. And then there's something called ADS-B, which is not on drones, it's on small aircraft or on aircraft, not small. And it basically squawks their position. So if you have a Air 2, it has an ADS-B system that receives that signal. So it will let you know that there's a manned aircraft nearby. Now, there's nothing on your drone letting the plane know that you're nearby, which is probably a good thing anyway, because you're way below them, or you should be. To pass the test, you need 70%. I got an 83 with about 2 or 3 weeks of studying what's online. And if I give a foot stomper takeaway, spend a lot of time looking at the sectional charts. That's going to be a map. It's going to have different radius circles. There's a bunch of really good YouTube channels on how to read sectional charts. So those are critical. I can't even emphasize enough how important those are. So today on Reddit, somebody asked the question, how do I help somebody who just failed? So that was sort of the impetus to put this video together real quick, just to get this out before I start to forget things. So when you take the test, they're going to hand you a piece of paper, and on that piece of paper, it's going to say in all caps, "Do not lose this report." So that's more important if you pass, because this has all of your information for your exam ID and things like that. But it's also very important to retest, because there's going to be a section, that's the second paragraph down, that says a single code may represent more than one incorrect response. So what that's doing is it's grouping all of the questions that you failed and giving you the section and identifier for that. So for example, the fourth one for me was U like uniform, A like alpha, dot I like India, dot F like Frank, dot K like kilo, 4. So with that, I can go to this, and you can go to this online, if you search for FAA-S like Sierra -ACS-10B. So I take that UA1F. So all of the UAs are going to be your unmanned aerial systems. And so I can go to UAIFK-K4, ADSB out, references 14 CFR part 89, and a whole bunch of stuff after that to determine the applicant exhibits satisfactory knowledge associated with the operating rules and their associated operating requirements. So that's basically saying I need to go study ADSB. So if you fail, use that list so that they're telling you exactly. And what I did was I even went through and I highlighted all of the ones that I missed. So I know I missed category 3, operations over people. I missed ADSB. I missed registration requirements for the SUAS. I think I talked myself out of the right answer from 3 years to 4, or 4 years to 3. See, I need to go back and restudy them. Prior authorization required for certain airspace, and that could even been just something I missed on a sectional chart, and I needed prior authorization. And then what I did was I even went back and I went to the topics and I put how many I missed relative to the weight. And so I know I missed 4 questions about regulations, 2 questions about airspace and requirements, 2 about weather, 2 about operations. So I know I should spend most of my time on section 1, regulations. So, and again, you can get the specifics from the topics that you missed. So I'm a prior Air Force instructor. So I've put together standardized tests like this and standardized training programs. And throughout my 19 years in uniform, I was usually HQ, highly qualified, or distinguished graduate, which means I had the highest scores. And it's just by following exactly principles like that. So study those and you should do well on your retest. So as far as the actual flying, I log everything now. I log how was the weather. I went out and I flew today. So I put, there was a lady walking her dog and there was a landscaper. I put, was anybody overflown? That way, if anybody ever calls in or emails a complaint to the FAA, I can just go to my logbook. I say, all right, on the 27th of April, someone says you flew over them. So I can go to my things. Okay, I flew my Air 2 on that day. Nobody was overflown. I flew 3 missions. There's a park nearby. I flew around it once. There's some new homes being constructed. I went around the homes. And then I like to walk the dog, if you will. I'll walk the drone home as I walk. So that was my 3rd flight, and no people overflown. So I usually also add cars if I'm near roads. So that's kind of a bust on me. If I update firmware, I'll put that on there. In the early days, I'd put little things too, like no vibrations, no problems. Because anytime I first start flying the drone, the first thing I do is I come up to eye level, and then I physically walk around it and I look at all the props. How are they circulating? How are the motors sounding? If it's the Air 2, does the detection system start warning that I'm in front of it as I come around the front of it? Things like that. And in my logs, I'm also putting what are the static winds, what are the gusts. So I'll use Before You Fly or one of those other apps. And if it's going to gust above 22, I generally don't fly, but I'll still put the gusts in there. I put in there which batteries that I've used for those flights. So like today, I used flights or batteries 2 and 3. So I went through and I actually labeled my batteries. So you can see this is battery number 1. So I'll put that in my logbook. I used battery number 1. Tomorrow or next flight, start with battery number 2. And then firmware updates. So if something starts to happen after a certain date, I kind of know, okay, what day did I update to a firmware? I mean, that's never born anything useful, but I figure it, it can't hurt to log that information. As far as flying, if you've done any gaming, so I've been gaming with the Xbox ever since the Xbox original came out, so it's been quite a while. And flying in games such as Halo, stick mode 3 becomes way more intuitive, I believe, if you've been good at those games. So I would consider switching to stick mode 3. You can also change your sensitivities. So look at the speeds at which things start and stop. So you can make it where when you let off the thumb, it's much slower in smoothness. And that's what it's actually called in the DJI controller is your smoothness. Other than that, let's see, a high vis vest can help you if people approach you often. There's a lot of people who've said that if you wear a high vis vest, people will ignore you. So I actually went out and I bought one. Let's see if I can grab it quickly. Yeah. Anyway, so you get the idea. And then finally, you can get something like a radio, VHF radio. So like the iCom 325, which I have. So if there's small aircraft flying by nearby, you can hear the traffic and hear what's going on. They're pretty pricey though, so expect to spend probably at least a good $300 on it. One of the things that I did was I also used a label maker, and I put my email and phone number on the top of the drone. So if anybody finds it, it's an easy way to find me. The second one there I already mentioned, labeling the batteries so that I can keep track of which ones I've used and which ones I haven't been. And then it's a requirement that you put your registration on the side. So Pilot Institute and others have free stickers that you can get online. They'll mail them to you and you can put those on there. Just keep in mind, if you go from recreational to part 107, the registration numbers change. So if you're recreational, you can get one number put up to 4 drones for $5. Whenever you get 107, now you have to get a 107 registration for each drone individually. So if you had, let's say, 3 drones, you spent $5 recreationally, now you gotta spend $15 to register each of those as a part 107 aircraft. So yeah, there's that. And that's basically it. So any questions, comments, leave them below. Shoot me a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So have a great day.